again to the Terminal Podcast, where in the end, it's all about the numbers. I am your host. We are broadcasting high above Civic Center Station, and tonight I'm going Mets up in the middle to fill the time. The MLB app, which I've paid for, isn't working with my Samsung television. I don't know why that matters at all, but it's not working to help me fill the time between now and opening day, which is still a few weeks away. So, to fill said time, I was watching UEFA Champions League football or soccer and just flipped it on because there wasn't anything else and came in on VAR, video assistance review. Lloyd Kelly of Juventus jumped in play and he headed the ball. As he's coming down, once again, he's already headed the football. He's headed the soccer ball. He's coming down after heading said soccer ball. His eyes are watching the soccer ball that he just put his head onto, and Galatasaray, which is a Turkish league player, is underneath him. He didn't touch the ball at all, but Kelly of Juve, he came down, and the galley guy was there, and he came down on his leg. The leg was the worst. The ref didn't. He paused play because the player is down, but they didn't. The camera in the sky, however, saw a potential red card action and called the ref over to the VAR, which is the video assistance review sign. So I came in as they were showing all the different replays of, the player, as I just described, jumping in the air, heading the football, watching it as it's going over, as he's coming down. There's the player that's underneath him, and they show him slowing down. They see him coming down again, and slowing back and forth because the eye in the sky called the ref over because the player made a quote, strong, unfair contact with the opponent. Looks horrible when you freeze it and slow it down. But unfortunately, the game, as life, is played outside of zeros and ones. It wasn't in the game. Juventus player was called off, so Juve played one down, and it was an absolutely amazing game because they were one down again, and they were down 3 goals on the 2 goal going past system. I can't think of the words for it. Either way, they scored 2 goals with being a man down to tie the game, and unfortunately, it got ran out of gas and lost in overtime. But it was a great game to watch. But games like I'm watching that game because I'm waiting for baseball games to start. Baseball starts soon enough, and when they do start, as is already with games that are going on in spring training, it's got the ABS system. Um, the little bit of time that it was showcased in spring training, I thought it worked well. It was a lot faster than it's the few times that I have seen it now. It was swift. It was the guy would tap on his head. This was at least last spring, and they'd immediately go up to the camera and they'd show the play and the pitch, and it was within 3 seconds. It was there, it was done, and we've moved on. Now it's probably in a allowance for the eventual ad sponsorship for a product that obviously could show up maybe once or twice in a game or not at all. But I'll explain the rules in a sec. But the point is, now it's the tap on the head by the batter or the pitcher or the catcher, which signifies that they want to challenge the call that the umpire did. And there's a delay, and then it goes over to the MLB signal, and then it slowly comes up to the plate, which is, as I said before, it's just like if you watch tennis, if you watch the US Open or Wimbledon or anything like that, and any of those players question a call, and you get to slow down and like that kind of, because Wimbledon has it the best, which is, I want to say that's the next one coming up. So you can see it over there. It's replay exists. It does. We've moved on. This is the 21st century. We have to live with it, and this is part of it. It does it in other sports. It can work in baseball if it's kept this fast, or it's from 3 seconds last year, it's probably now closer to seven, and just off the slowness of transmitting it over and probably sending the signal back home. And by home, I mean the MLB database to log what's going to happen next. But it's an example that is set that is, probably going to get. I think I want to say I saw this clip on the Facebook, or it might have been on the YouTubes, but it happens. This is something that if you're a baseball fan, you've seen it all the time. It's just it was a spring training game. Batter pitcher threw a pitch. It was right down the middle of the plate. The umpire just called it a ball. This is how human umpires. It wasn't the consistency of the way the umpire is, but it's just something that happened. The batter immediately tapped on his head, or the catcher did tapped on his head, and they looked. And if you look at it, you're like, how could you possibly miss that call? Well, it's human error, sadly. And when human error happens, it's usually not that bad. But what human error has created is they consistently call what looks like an oval. If you look at the strike zone as like a 3 by 3 grid with 3 by 3 table with, high up and with the upper pitches as, outside, then middle and inside part of the plate, middle of the zone, outside, middle and part of the plate and low and everything like that. And kind of look at the oval inside of that is where umpires kind of get. So what you're missing is the corners. You're missing the upper outside corner is the most rarest of strike pitches that just called. And that is the kind of pitch that should now be called if a catcher feels that his pitcher's got it and it doesn't get called by the umpire or anything like that. That's the kind of pitch that could get called. But as the rules are, the teams each have two chances. Once again, the only people that can ask for a replay are the pitcher, the catcher, and the batter. And when it comes to that, the pitcher is the absolute last person that should ask for a replay at all, ever, 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 ever. Um, I say that I caught years ago. I've covered a ton of baseball games. It's been youth, but at the end of the day, the pitcher's mound and the actual strike zone of home plate, it's 60 feet, 6 inches at the major league level, going downhill on an elevated slope towards a not uniform strike zone because every batter has a different strike zone because every batter's shoulder pit and top of their thigh kind of, middle of their thigh kind of area is not the same. Um, there's no way the pitcher knows. Just know that. The catcher and the hitter are the only two people that have any kind of an idea of what's strike and what isn't. Um, and what this might sneak away from is catchers who are known like Benito Santiago or Yadi Molina with the Cardinals. Just the two that kind of jump off my mind of catchers who steal strikes, who are just able to frame pitches with the way their glove is set up and trace down a strike zone. Javi Lopez with the Braves. I mean, between him and having Glavine and Smoltz and Maddox and everything like that, the amount of strikes that they were able, the way they were able to work an umpire is similar to the way they would work a batter. Is if I can get you to believe that this is the outside corner and me throwing a strike here is a strike, but I can just inch it a little bit further out and throw that same pitch. If you called that earlier one a strike, then maybe that this is going to be a strike too. And it's this, yeah, I mean, that kind of working of an umpire is the same way you'd work a batter and trying to get that batter to swing at that outside pitch because you believe it's a strike. The umpire believes it's a strike. It's probably 2 inches off the plate, um, which was a 20th century problem, and it doesn't exist in the 21st century thanks to ABS. And how that's going to actually be. is really what we're going to see. And honestly, I feel happy that I'm at the going to see something that's brand new to the sport that I love and having seen what it was like and the invention, having seen years of baseball without the strike box and how that looked and how it was. And now having a strike box, now suddenly it's not going to, the strike box isn't going to be there as much because, in fact, I think it's going to go away just so that when they do bring in the strikes, the strike zone, you can see the strike zone and what it was called right or wrong. And I think taking away the strike box for that is going to really allow for understanding of how difficult an umpire's job is for them to get it right 90 to 95% of the time. They're getting these calls right. When you take away the strike box and you start looking at it, what you really wonder is how Joe Joe Smalley, who's sitting in the third deck on the left side of the third baseline, how he can see that that pitch is a strike, but the umpire can't. It's the most fascinating. But this is uh, this is something that if you've been in the minors, if you're just fresh in from the last couple of years, you're familiar with. It's the modern Fairweather fan that'll find this new spitballing here. What's new in the tabloids? Just trying to do a walk on. See what happened in the news lately. Did you see they held the State of the Union the other day? Did you see that? State of the Union? They had all that clapping and standing ovations and chants of USA, USA. Wouldn't it have been cool if like all the Democrats had got together and came up with a solidary, a plan that they all were in on, like everybody, the entire. I mean, it could have been the Republicans. It kind of was. They all clapped and danced together. So if the Democrats had just all came up with one plan and pulled off like a flash mob move, like they all brought like those big googly eyes that you can get like the Dollar Tree store. Like they all bring a pair of those, and then just they all wait all together and do all the things like that they're all doing it regular. Like not the sitting down. Like when he did the everybody stand up, whatever like that. They all should have just stood up and everything like that. And then afterward, they just decide they all hear something really stupid, and then one person says, "This is it," and they snap, and they all put on the googly eyes, and then you get the flash mob moment, and everybody takes a picture and everything like that, and then they all walk out. It wouldn't have mattered what was said to spark it or anything like that, but if they had all done it at the same time, that would have been trial the viral Twitter moment. That would have been what's on the front page. It wouldn't have mattered anything what he said. Uh, I didn't hear what he said. I wasn't really listening in honor of George Carlin. I just came up with that because people like it when you're topical. Uh, the the main topic of this podcast, however, is really a way for me to just get my thoughts and opinions out. They were going to come out anyway. I just have a microphone and can say it. I'm not like I'm getting paid for this, but I can certainly not get paid for my way too early. It's not even March yet. But I get to talk baseball, so it's not even March yet. Way too early. 2026 Mets starters. I'm not going to go with the lineup because it's kind of too much to ask for. Once again, it's not even March, and I get to talk baseball. I can't tell you how much I love that. I can't tell you how much I love every time I get to think about who is going to start in left field for the New York Mets this year. It's Juan Soto. Juan Soto. Juan Soto is on the New York Mets, which is my favorite team. It's- he's Juan Soto. The biggest if he stays healthy, that's me knocking on wood. He's going to the Hall of Fame. last year, Juan Soto, he didn't fit in well for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the regular season. He wasn't Juan Soto. The rest of the season, he was Juan Soto, so much so that he finished third in the MVP running. He led the league in walks and on base percentage, like Juan Soto does. Oh, by the way, he led the league in stolen bases, the National League at least, with 38 stolen bases. Because, for a lark, he tried to go for 40-40. That Juan Soto is in left field. That Juan Soto who says he's got to figure out a way to win the MVP from Shohei Ohtani, he's got to figure out a way to do that. That Juan Soto, that guy who you hear that from and realize that means he's going to actually try and do something to do that. That Juan Soto is in left field. Center field, Luis Robert. He's Spanish of some kind. I don't know. I want to put an accent on it because Luis Robert just sounds. If it's just Luis Robert, if he's just a 225 center fielder who might hit 10, 15 home runs, who's definitely going to steal 20, 25 bases, but is definitely going to play a solid A plus center field defensively speaking, I'll take that. We've had Tyrone Taylor and Harrison Bader was just a Met a couple years ago and was so bad that Tyrone Taylor beat him out for the position. That's why Tyrone Taylor, you say it 3 times super fast, and eventually Tyrone Taylor is playing in the NLCS because we didn't have a center fielder better than Tyrone Taylor. Harrison Bader was on the roster. That's why he wasn't on the team. That's why when he came back with the Phillies and was signed there because he wasn't on anybody's roster, and then he got signed in the last minute because he wasn't good enough to beat out Tyrone Taylor. And yet, when he plays and gets hot for the Phillies, suddenly we're supposed to try and sign Harrison Bader in the offseason to be the center. I mean, the when that was said out loud, when someone didn't go, we just had him and he wasn't good enough to beat out the guy that we have now. Why would you sign him more for more money? That makes no sense at all. But giving a chance to a guy who is a former All-Star, who has the physical tools but hasn't been able to stay on the field, sounds like a much better plan than trying to pay the guy who couldn't beat out the guy who's still on the roster. Louis Robert. I'm going to turn him into Frenchman, but it's Louis Robert is in center field. I'm just going to say Carson Bench is going to be the right fielder. He went 3 for 3 today. I saw the first hit, which was a chopper. He's from the left side. He's got good enough speed that he put one down, and it was a super high hop. He was going to be safe anyway. But I got no problem giving a kid a chance in right field. They're giving him, and by they I mean David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza are giving him every possible opportunity to be the starting right fielder. I don't see why he doesn't become the right fielder, and that will become evident as we move along. Third base is going to be Bo Bichette. Yes, Francisco Lindor is coming off of the hamate bone injury. He's just now got the stitches out. He's just going to start with glove work, blah, blah, blah. He's on schedule to be ready for opening day. If he's not ready for opening day, there are options that are going to already be on the roster, like Ronnie Mercutio. They had this Duvall guy who I saw. I want to say he was, a, another prospect who's like got A plus speed or something like that. He'd be a different aspect. Lindor is going to be the shortstop. Bo Bichette is going to be the third baseman. He's not going to revert back to being a shortstop. When the Mets were, I don't know why I heard this from Stearns when he signed. They had Bo Bichette on the mindset early on to play second base before the before the Marcus Simeon trade became available, they were already talking to Bo Bichette to be the second baseman for that team when they were still trying to build it together. So the idea that Bo Bichette was this sudden, oh, we got to rush, we don't got Kyle Tucker, what can we do? That's not the case. It was sped up because all right, we don't got Kyle Tucker, let's get this done now. But it wasn't like they weren't already talking to Bo Bichette once they got Marcus Simeon at second base in the trade for Brandon Nimmo, which is really, we're trading two bad contracts. We'll trade you our guy, which is 25 for the next 3 years, for your guy, which is 20 for the next five. Right? Right. That's the trade. It's a contract trade. Brandon Nimmo, God bless his soul, was a great Met. I remember him when he was signed, and he was this guy from Wyoming. It was they didn't even have a baseball team, and he was practicing on his own and all this stuff like that. And him running on walks down the first base line was I always was expecting him at some point to just keep going. And I feel like I bet you he did that when he was in high school. He would just run down the line and just keep going and get second base on it a couple times because he had pretty good speed. But unfortunately, with injuries and age, he wasn't the same player who you could put in center field as as a average defensive center field. He wasn't an A plus center field defensively, but he could play center field before he got older and he got injured and had become a left fielder. And the thing is, for another 5 years at that price, that's that doesn't equal out because eventually he's going to have to become a DH is the mindset because he's not going to be able to be healthy enough or good enough to play left field. And fortunately, at some point, that's going to be Juan Soto. If he decides to stay for the length of his contract, he gets out. He's got a out in 4 years from now. He's got an out. I think what's when he turns 30. If he's going to stay for the length of his contract, my guess is at the very least the last five he's the DH, if not the last eight, where he's now a part-time DH, part-time this, something along those lines, to make sure that he's still able to, I don't know, lead the league in on base percentage and walks into his late 30s. Why would there's Boba sits at third base. Francisco Lindor will be the shortstop once the thing comes on. And once he's ready to go, he might not have the power, but I don't need him to have the power. I need him to be a plus defensive shortstop with Marcus Simeon as the second baseman and Luis Robert in center field, meaning that the center of the defense for the New York Mets has now is now a plus feature on the team. I'll get to the backstop in a moment, but the core, the middle of your team, if the defense is strong up the middle, you can deal with the edges. But the core defense, when everybody talks about having team defensive strength, you're talking about defensive strength up the middle of the field. If you think about it, when the ball's hit, it's hit to left center field and right center field. If you've got a great center fielder who can track that down, you've now shortened the field. If you've got a ground ball that's hit hard up the middle or to the left of the second baseman or the right of the second base bag or something like that, and you've got a shortstop and a second baseman who can handle that, suddenly it's not that much for the third baseman or first baseman to handle because the second baseman and the shortstop are able to fill the gaps. That's the point of having a strong defensive up the middle because it's strengthening. It allows for the other sides to not have to be as dependent because they can handle things, which means Juan Soto in left field is now a great defensive left fielder, a position he's played before because he's played both right and left field because when he was in Washington and blah, 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 blah. So with Simeon on the right side, and whether he hits or not, he's still a gold glove second baseman. first base situation in this way too early February opinion is it's going to basically be a three-headed beast between Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, and Jorge Polanco. One's going to play first base, one is going to DH, the other one's going to be on the bench. That's the thing that I think is what Stearns was thinking about because he's still got these young bats. He's still got to figure out if they're going to be capable enough to be in the major leagues. And the thought is, if you've got those three of them going around, come trade deadline time, if I need to get something, I can move one of them and something else to go get what I want. They've been proving it all year, or they've reached some point we're going to have to move them. But that's the thought. That's my thought process. That's what makes sense because you've got this Ryan Clifford guy who's apparently the first baseman on the rise. I mean, like there's other people coming from the minor leagues that make those two, one of the three, expendable, if not trade bait already. Uh, I said Lindor, both Lindor and Jorge Polanco, I was looking up, were born in 1993. And I was just talking to my sister on the phone, and she was reminding me of memories that I don't have. Like, apparently, I've been to Amsterdam like twice, but I was like 3 or 4 when I was there, so I don't remember that. But I have memories from 1993. They're not many, but I've got a couple. And that is just something that makes me feel old. Francisco Alvarez is the Mets catcher. He was born in 2001, I want to say, or 2000. He's young. I have a lot of memories from that time. And I don't think everyone, Met fans, understand the luxury of having a farm system catcher who at 23 years old, 24, is already a serviceable defensive catcher. He's had ups and downs because he's had injuries. He's had to work on his blocking, but he's not Todd Zeal back there. Okay. He was the number one prospect in baseball just a few years ago. He's come up, and it's not like he did that, and everybody was like, oh, we were completely wrong. No one's ever said we were completely wrong about that. I've yet to hear that, except out of the mouths of. I actually saw someone who believed that by the middle of June, Luis Torrens would be the starting catcher for the Mets. And not like because Alvy has gotten injured, just because Torrens is the better catcher, is essentially what it seemed like. Francisco Alvarez, right now, at let's just say 24, he's better than the majority of the major league catchers that are out there. Period. Full stop. Last year, I'm using fancy numbers because people like fancy numbers. The league OPS for the catcher position was 700. The duo of Alvarez and Torrens were 675. So they were below average OPS wise. And that does include Alvarez, and when he came back in the final 6 to 8 weeks of the season, once he returned from Syracuse and they were trying to fix his swing and work on his blocking, as I mentioned earlier, he came back and he was lights out. Still, they finished below average when it came to OPS. However, when it comes to wins above replacement, which is a little bit bigger because OPS is just on base percentage and slugging. Wins above replacement is wins. Seattle, for the specific catcher position, Seattle and Cal Raleigh, who was second in the MVP award, or did he win it? He should have won it. Either way, they were at 5.4. The Mets, that combination of those two, they were ninth overall at 3. The league average was 2.1. That wins above replacement includes offense, but it also includes the defense. And that's the thing that isn't, for whatever reason, not given much credit. because the both of them, between Luis Torrens and Francisco Alvarez, teams the strategy of running is sort of slowed down because you're hesitant, whereas the Mets run whenever they feel. But the Mets allowed the third least stolen bases in the league. And the thing about that is they allowed the third least. They caught their caught stealing percentage of 33% was tied for the best in baseball with Salvador Perez, one of two captains in all of baseball, Salvador of the Kansas City Royals. It's a Royale with cheese. I say all that because I am puzzled, baffled, and other adjectives like that as to why people can't just wait for Francisco Alvarez to get ready and blossom. Because even if he doesn't, even if he just stays exactly as it is right now, which is kind of silly, but even if he does, this is still better than about two-thirds of the league. And defensively, it's top five. What's the problem? Why would that's it's like it's just the lack of patience and that it sputters me. It brings me annoyance. And that's just another sign of my age because I'm old enough to remember the bad times, to have lived through them, and as I said, have memories. The bulk of the 1990s are the bad times. In 1990, the Mets won 91 games. And that's the tail end of the 86 Mets. That's the end of it with really Howard Johnson and I want to say Frank Viola's probably on that 90s team. Yeah, I mean it's I'm saying names of people that weren't even on the 86 team Howard was, but you know what I mean, but like the tail end of that straight stretch of Mets baseball kind of thing. I was looking at a 5-year run. I guess you want to go 86 to 90 would be it. In 1999, with Bobby V, Bobby Valentine is the coach and everything like that, the Mets win 97 games. So 91 wins in 1990, 97 wins in 1999. Everything in between that was less than 91. And a lot of that wasn't, oh, they won 87 here or there. No, no, no. No, no. There was a lot of bad in between there. And I watched a lot of that bad and lived through a lot of that bad throughout my childhood. That's my formative years as I'm growing up. Proud to be a Mets fan and living through this horrid time. I remember all that. So I'm more than willing to wait for Francisco Alvarez to actually have a healthy season and to see what he can do. I'm willing to take the face value better middle defensive structure that the team has. And when I hear the POBO say run prevention and defensive is a must, recognize that he did exactly what he said he was going to do. I don't feel like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that I feel like this is a better, fundamentally better team. It's a different team, but it's a fundamentally better team, more able to win the close games, to win to win the game where all it takes is instead of swinging for a home run, willing to put the ball in play and move the runner over and take the sacrifice fly. That kind of thing, I feel like that wasn't happening. Well, it certainly wasn't happening. It didn't happen, hence why the core or whatever like that didn't win anything. The whole 0 70 in when you're trailing by a run going into the ninth inning, that happened last year. That's the kind of team that you need to break up because they're not winning. Why you get gruff for breaking that team up. I don't understand. I am old and I'm in between thoughts. And so I'll use this as an exit here, as always, with a numerical trivia question. I was talking Mets because this is Mets Up. And on June 5th, 1998, the Mets played at Fenway Park in what was likely the first time since 1986. And there was probably a large deal made about it. In fact, I want to say that Friday night, that June 5th was a Friday, so it was a Friday night game. I'm saying that because I'm sure it's memorable for me because I'm about 98% sure that I was in the city of Boston when that happened. I'd love to say that I was at that game. I probably tried to go to one of the games because it would have been a Friday night game, then a Saturday afternoon game. I'm sure they probably had the Fox, maybe the 1 o'clock, the 4 o'clock game. And then that Sunday night, they probably had the Sunday night game with in it's 98. So you still would have had John Miller and Joe Morgan, which who thought you'd miss those two on the behind the mic, huh? But I definitely would have asked uh, my friend Marc Sinibaldi about his seats at Fenway, which he had at the time. Speaking of, this is a non-subtle cross promotion. You should check out my pod talking with Marc about his new book, The Redemption File. I say that as a subtle cross promotion because Marc had season tickets, but I don't know if he filed away that Friday night game since the Mets were victorious in that game. And they beat Pedro Martinez to do it. Pedro Petey, the Hall of Famer to be. That year, 1998, he finished second in the Cy Young. He went 19-7 with a 2.98 ERA with 251 strikeouts. And that was second. So, of the 251 of that season, the number I'm looking for is how many strikeouts did Pedro Martinez have on June 5th, 1998, when he faced the New York Mets in Fenway Park? Here's the hint. It was also the same amount of home runs he allowed that night. So thank you for listening. However, whether on Spotify, Pandora, if you're on Apple through their podcast, please leave a comment. You can watch and comment about this in every episode, including cross promotion, my conversation interview with Marc Sinibaldi and his new novel, The Redemption Files. That and all episodes you can see on youtube.com/ at terminal pod. It's the channel for all your questions. The answer to the trivia question is in the description for this episode. I'll be back soon enough with hopefully something better to put down. Take it easy down your life's highway, and throughout the rain, have a good evening.